Howdy, folks. Owen from EMF. We have another episode of EMF TV, and I am very delighted to have on a fantastic coach all the way from Australia, mate. Northern Australia, now Brisbane, just up the top right corner. Dalton Frank. Is it Dalton Frank or is it Dalton Frank? Anything further than that? Dalton Frank.
Oh, mate. As long as you call
anything.
me, as long as you kiss me afterwards, I'm pretty okay.
Absolutely, I buy you dinner, but there's no problem there. So look, Dalton, I only know you really in an online capacity. I've seen a lot of the kind of the work that you've done, replying to people's comments or helping out people with some funny views. Let's say see sense, and you've been helping out Ian O'Driscoll with some of the work he's been doing online. But if you could, for the followers that mightn't have heard of you before, if you could just tell us how did you get into this health and fitness industry, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, for sure, mate. Thanks for having me on. So I got into this firstly when I was in the army. I really was skinny fat, so I kind of didn't like that, and I wanted to catch up to the guys that were a lot more shredded or a lot more faster than myself. So I tried to do what they did and catch up with them, and I found that something was lagging. I wasn't quite right with my training. It wasn't quite right with my eating. So I started jumping online and checking out bodybuilding forums and every other forum, left, right, and center, Lyle McDonald's stuff. And I started just trying to read and absorb as much as I could. From there, I realized I knew absolutely nothing. So everything that I was reading kind of didn't help in any way, capacity, shape, or form. So I went back even further than that, and I just started watching basic YouTube videos on how to move more efficiently, or how to do squats and deadlifts and whatnot. So I started there. After I left the Defence Force, I went and got my personal training certifications here in Australia, and then I started practicing in a gym. I did that for a year and a bit for full time, and then after that I realized that I could help a lot more people online. So I jumped out of the gym. I now do all full-time online coaching, and I'm actually studying to do dietetics at university right now at the moment.
Nice. So the fact that you realized, you said you didn't know enough, or that when you started looking at the information, you realized how much you didn't know. What would you give, let's say, now, would you give yourself any advice when you were back there, or if someone was in your position that decides to have a look at the science, and almost initially they're overwhelmed with all the different intricacies and the little minutiae, and they just don't know almost where to begin?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a awesome pyramid that's been going around for a while now, and Eric Helms, I think, made it famous. Alan Aragon, I think, does his own version, and Mike Israel's kind of got one. It's a little bit different with them all, but it's a spectrum of things that are obviously more important. When I started jumping online, a lot of the stuff that I was advertised or found was stuff that is really, it doesn't really help too much without everything else covering down that base, giving you a good groundwork. So stuff like supplementation, like looking for what type of fat burner was the most effective thing to help me get through my training. It's really asking
ketones. So, ketones, I hear, are good.
Yeah, well, how I first looked at it was as if like supplementation, and then how training and exercise and my eating should couple with supplementation to make my results even better, instead of going the popular way of figuring out obviously your calories, getting your macronutrients sorted after that, and actually just getting into the gym and doing some training.
Absolutely, kind of failing your way to success in essence, and realizing that's a good thing, and not that you're just worse off every single day. So one thing I particularly wanted to talk to you about, because you're a very good evidence-based practitioner, but those words evidence-based seems to be becoming almost a little bit trendy, for those people to kind of they say whatever they want as long as they have one reference, they're golden. How do you find you are able to use the science in a way that kind of is relatable to the lay person who may not be able to read the research? You're able to put it across well. How did you find you were able to do that, or is that the way you've always been?
Well, when I first started looking at articles, I didn't even understand what a reference was. I was just reading what people were writing and going, okay, does that make sense to me? Do I understand that? It wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 months into my reading that I saw probably my first reference, and I was like, oh, okay, what does that mean? What is that? Where's this information coming from? And after clicking through and trying to like comprehend what the study was saying, I had no idea, but other than mice did some really cool things. So I was like, does that was that my answer then? Because this guy's provided some more references or whatever. Does that mean I should be following this? So from then on, I started looking for those references and everything else that I was reading, and I'd pull them up. But yeah, quite quickly I was overwhelmed with the language, the terminology, how the study was done, or what it even meant to me in the end. So what I started doing is, instead of focusing on what the study was showing and what someone was talking about, I'll just try and gauge an appreciation of what is meant to be going on for some of the human body, some of the physiology, some of the anatomy. So instead of focusing on that particular aspect, because that's what a study is, it's only just a snapshot of some context at that point in time, I started thinking about, okay, how do we know what the human body does? How do we then apply what I'm looking for here, and does this study then make any sense from that context there? Realistically, the evidence-based crowd has kind of become a pretty much, like you said, they can kind of get away with saying anything now as long as they post a study or two. No one kind of wants to challenge them anymore, and it's kind of gone a little bit the pendulum swung a little bit too far. It's kind of a bit like, if it fits your macros, it's now kind of just fit as much junk as you can in your diet. It's people are getting away with more and more ridiculous stuff just because they're posting studies, and it's now, unfortunately, the people that, unless you want to click through and read and comprehend those, it kind of just comes off like you're an authority. But a lot of the time, most of the stuff that they're posting is either completely useless or out of the context that they're even talking about. So a lot of the things that I do, when I do see that now, I'll go in and obviously I'll pull up the study and get in as far as I can. I'll look for things that support and don't support it. And that way, then I can try and gauge at least a global view of what's going on. But I found the best way of helping with that is if I can communicate it to someone, if I can talk to about it with someone, and if I can make them laugh and understand, I think I've done a good job at comprehending the subject. Obviously, it doesn't make me an expert, but it's a really fun way to destroy some stupid ideas by making everyone else laugh at the absurdity of some of the things as well. So absolutely. I found that's definitely helped.
Absolutely. That leads me well into my next question. How do you use studies and research and science in your day-to-day practice? That the people that you're dealing with probably don't want to know, and they don't need to know the science. So how do you filter or change the language so that they can hear the message that you want them to get across? So humor is one thing you use.
Yeah, definitely. I try and do a lot of things in a way that I've always been a big prankster, kind of a clown, and I like to be the center of attention a lot. So if I can find a way to get more people surrounded,
you must have some Irish blood.
Yeah, and as long as I'm entertaining them, I don't care if they're laughing at me or with me, but as long as I'm entertaining them, is kind of and I can hold their attention there. That's how I kind of use it, and we'll get it across. But a lot of the stuff that I read and I'm interested in really has zero application for a lot of the people out there. I like to just read and understand a variety of topics across a different range of things, but more and more it comes back down to just adding in another piece of the puzzle that I already know. That was kind of learning about the human body and about nutrition and training. So realistically, I try and not communicate too much science with everyone. I try and get down more so the application of where we can go with it. So necessarily, I don't want people to understand that something might have 3.4 or 3.5 grams of protein to be more beneficial for muscle protein synthesis or something like that. I would generally go, all right, as long as you can get in, a lean meat serving or two a day, and get into the gym and train, you'll get some muscle growth. So the real things are what they can actually take away and apply to themselves. That's what I'll try and find.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you mentioned it there, the art of communication. I guess it's the science of application and the art of communicating and bringing that divide together. Do you find that you kind of have to deal with different people in a different way when you're dealing with them online or when you're dealing with them in person, or is it kind of get a blanket approach and then go from there?
Yeah, I'm not too much different online as I am in person, and I've had a couple of people say to me that I'm kind of blunt or I'm very straightforward, and I don't beat around the bush as it is when I'm talking to people in person, and my interactions online sometimes can come across quite blunt, but it's not because I'm actually trying to be blunt. It's just necessarily that I don't have much else to add outside of that, and unless it's funny, I don't. I just want to get the information across. So. But really, I try and approach it all in the same way. I am who I am online and I am in person. But a lot of the language that I do use, it does change depending on the crowd and where I am as well. So I do have a way of trying to talk to newbies when they're in the gym, because it can be quite overwhelming if we start talking about how we can accentuate how much muscle mass they have in for their biceps. They just want to care about looking good in their bikinis or whatever. So Absolutely. It definitely will depend on the person that's there as well.
Absolutely. Do you find any differences between, let's say, the clients you might have in the UK and the clients that you have in Australia, or just the fitness industry in general? Are there any discrepancies? Are ye doing something that we're not? Anything like that?
I do find that over here in Australia, we've got a bigger push for women and guys to be generally just a lot leaner. No one over here really wants to gain a lot of muscle mass, or it's kind of unique that people want to gain muscle mass. A lot of people are just looking to get leaner and healthier, drop some body fat, whereas the client interactions that I do get and the clients that I do have from the UK, there's a very specific focus for obviously improving how their body looks, how their body image is, and performing a little bit better as well. So I don't know if that's just because the crowd that I hang around here with in Australia, I try and hang out with more general population people, but it does definitely seem to be more of a trend here that people aren't necessarily focused on trying to gain as much muscle size as they are, but more so just trying to drop down their body fat.
Absolutely. I think up here we're probably trying to look good in a hoodie to to deal with our climate, which means we need to bulk, and you're trying to look good in maybe a pair of skimpies. So
you want to lean down on the beach, so
pure seasonal.
Everyone wants to be lean.
So again, that nice lead into my next question. Who is the client? What type of client do you deal with, or who is your ideal client that you're trying to work with mostly?
I think my ideal client has always been based around my mum, actually. Nice. She was one of the first people that I always wanted to help, and so I've always been very attracted and very in tune with talking to women that have been struggling to losing weight. So it seems kind of counterintuitive that a 25-year-old guy that's never really struggled with obesity or overweightness to try and communicate to these people about overweight, eating issues, body image issues, and stuff like that. But it's definitely something that I've gone through myself, having different body issues or having different eating issues and whatnot. So it's not like it's completely unrelatable, but I definitely do find that would be one of my more target clients that I do definitely work with a lot more often. So
awesome. What kind of complaints would they come to you with, or would they have any like specific misconceptions that you'd be seeing over and over again and you're constantly having to dispel them?
Yeah, definitely the biggest one would be eating healthy means losing weight. I get this a lot. I get a lot of people telling to me how healthy they eat, how many different veggies and whatnot that they're eating, how much quinoa they've put on their plate. But it's irregardless of how different their diets are. The biggest common factor is obviously there's overconsumption going on somewhere. It could be overconsumption over a period of a weekend, which undoes their week of dieting. It could be sporadic periods of traveling around with work that makes them overconsume because of just the frequency or the availability of like fast foods around everywhere. But there's generally that is the things that they miss. So a lot of the time I get told that how healthy they're eating, but they don't quite understand the density of the foods or the ability that some of the foods that they do eat can quite quickly put them over into a calorie surplus. So
absolutely, it's similar to here that eating healthy to maintenance can almost justify the treats or the splurges, and we're just constantly, the healthier they eat, the more they'll treat, and they're gaining weight just non-stop, but they're focusing on the healthier eating, and they can't understand why it's getting worse and worse the more quinoa
Definitely.
they're buying, or the more expensive quinoa they're buying. How come this isn't working?
That's right. That's right.
That's something that it's good that we have a good handle on that, and we can usually help people. I was with Martin McDonald last weekend. I know you visited him recently, and he mentioned the some of the approaches he would take to dieting, that he'd be a little bit more, I wouldn't say extreme, but a little bit more hard line when dealing with people, that when they come to him, that he's not afraid to go on an aggressive deficit initially to push weight loss, to get some buy-in, and to really serve people well over the long run. So when you would start with a client, would you be more of the approach where kind of try and set them up slowly with some good habits, ease them into it, or kind of use the motivation they have there and then hit the ground hard, build a good month of wins, and then maybe take the foot off the pedal? How would you usually deal with people?
I have to say that my approach has been slightly changing of late. So I was very much in line with what Martin was doing there, with a very aggressive take advantage of that motivation and get them going, losing weight and being successful. But I've had a couple of repeat clients after leaving with me, coming back after a couple of months, and it's kind of showing me maybe that I haven't educated enough across the board how we handle coming out of an aggressive deficit like that into something more moderate or sustainable, or maybe that maybe that too aggressive approach doesn't lead to though we might get them that initial success, they still don't learn too much from that, or they don't. It's not for a long enough period for them to change their behaviors. So I'm starting to do a lot more now of nice, slow, sustainable changes over a period of time, which makes it a lot less stressful. I'm actually doing a kind of a little bit more of a wave of eating, or a couple of I term it either waves of eating or up and down days. So they'll have 3 days of eating at slightly lower, just above their deficit. So maybe instead of a 10% deficit, maybe we'd do a 5 to 7% for 3 days, and then just doing a 2-day normal maintenance, and then rolling back into that, having a 3 and 5, or depending on if their schedule, if they are really strict and they need some more flexibility around the weekends, we might make it like a 5 and 2 kind of diet. But I generally have it in short spouts where they just have to adhere to a couple of days before they get a little bit of a break. So finding that doing something like that more often is giving people with a lot more success and a lot more flexibility, which is kind of keeping them around a little bit longer to continue learning, but also keeping that weight loss off over the long run as well. So.
Absolutely. And do you find some form of intermittent fasting is helping you or helping your clients reach their goals that bit less stressful, I guess?
Yeah, I like to do a little test on all my clients to see if they respond well to intermittent fasting. It's something that I definitely love doing myself, not even just for the metabolic benefits, more so the psychological and the physiological changes that can happen when we do just go for a little bit longer without eating. How that can kind of suppress the hunger, or down-regulate how intense your hunger can be. I do like to test that, but it's definitely not for everyone. I can't get everyone to adhere to it, which is a good thing. I would not love everyone to be able to do it. I love that everyone's a little bit different, and that there's different approaches that we need for each of them. But it's definitely a tool that I'm finding is getting a little bit more popular over here, and I do find a lot of clients have some form of success with it. If it might not be the traditional 8 and 16, it might even just be 2 hours extended that they go on before they break their fast. But in that time, they're trying to get out and do some walking or do some activity and stuff to at least get them moving and changing away from the old behaviors that they were maintaining on, with that obviously putting on the weight as well. So
absolutely, I find just explaining to people that breakfast is not the most important meal of the day, or potentially you can skip it, is like mind blowing for them, and they just think that, wow, if that's possible, what other magic has this wizard up his sleeve? Like, so you don't mind telling people they don't have to eat breakfast, yeah?
Yeah, no, definitely like that, or like any of the meals. Like if it doesn't work for someone's schedule, like I've got one client, a male, that doesn't like to eat dinners. Like it just doesn't work. It finishes work a little bit later, and by the time that he would get home and finish up, it just makes it a little bit impossible for him. So we focus on a really big post-workout feed for him in the afternoon. And then he obviously there's a time that he has to travel from work to home, and he doesn't eat after that. He gets that last meal in there, he gets a little bit of protein from that. Absolutely. And that was something that he just struggled with for ages, because he was like, well, what happens? What about my dinner? Why don't I have to eat dinner? Like
the idea of dinner, the experience of it, like we usually call it tea here, but yeah. So we'll wrap up there now soon enough, but I do have one more question. I always ask everyone, if you could, with the wave of a magic wand, eliminate one myth that's currently breaking your balls, and what would that myth be? Training or nutrition?
That's a good one. Oh, it's a good one. I'm probably getting over like the ketosis is the magical diet for me. I kind of get bored of the question in my inbox of late. I don't know if it's something just because of the supplements that are coming out, or if somewhere someone's selling, or Lyle McDonald's the ketogenic diet book out and telling everyone how it's the magic to fat loss. It would probably be that all diets come down to being like personalized and contextual to the your preferences. So it'd definitely be something like around that keto diet at the moment.
So yeah, done with the keto. All right, so I'll ask you one more question. The most important thing you've learned in 2017 thus far?
Oh God, to keep giving back far out. Nice. Like for a little bit there, I slowed down with all my social media interaction. I did slow down with some of my personal training, and I did a little bit of me time, developed some stuff and some direction for where I want to go. And part of what I missed was how much I was giving back to everyone. The interactions, the love that I essentially was getting back from it was really cool. So it was something that I missed. So if I could definitely keep giving back, that would definitely be something that I've learned, is how valuable it is to appreciate those things. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a case of like, if you want to nearly email any health and fitness, top dog in the world, they'll email you back. Like if you message Lyle McDonald, he'd message you back. It's just it's a one good thing about our industry. I feel that people are very open to giving back because someone else possibly helps them 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's nice to keep that ball rolling for the next generation, which is kind of us, I guess.
Definitely.
But look, that's absolute fantastic content now, man. Thank you very much for coming on. You can go to bed now because it's obviously late enough in Brisbane, and I hope the weather picks up, but not really, because you probably have better weather than us right now, and it's actually our summer, like. So you can't have it all, man. But I'll put a link to the website in the show notes, and if anyone wants to find you, is the best place to find you on Lift the Weight, Eat the Food, or do you have any other places that you're active on?
Yeah, that'd probably be the most convenient place to find me. I'm pretty much all over Facebook and pretty much every fitness group that you'll find. But Eat the Food, Lift the Weight, that's definitely where you'll see me most often.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir, for coming on, and I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. Thanks, mate.
No problem.